Tired of Warframe? Did you beat Armored Core? Well, I've got news for you. Well, kinda. I was searching through Steam today, pushing through all the random AI generated games that flood it nowadays, until I found a little mech game. I figured I'd play a mission or two just to see what it was about, and then I'd move on to something else. That did not happen. Instead, I was hooked on this unique mix of gameplay and a bit of nostalgia for a bit of the component that reminds me of Armored Core of the past, and a bit of the present as well. Before I knew it, I'd spent way more time with it than I expected, literally hours just playing and replaying the three missions the demo gives us. The game's called Code Rapid, and if you've never heard of it before, I can't really blame you. It's being developed by a very small team. The demo only released yesterday on June 30th, and right now I think it's flying completely under the radar. But I definitely see how this could end up being one of those games that mech fans quietly fall in love with. The reason it grabbed me so quickly is pretty simple. It feels like the developers understand exactly why people enjoy games like Armored Core. They obviously take note of everything From Software did, but they also seem to understand what keeps you coming back for one more mission. So let's take a look at what Code Rapid is doing, where it still needs to work, and why I think this is a demo mech fans should probably check out. So, what exactly is Code Rapid? Well, it's an indie mech action game that's currently being developed by a team of just 4 people, which honestly makes some of what they've managed to build even more impressive. The demo drops you into a series of missions where you're fighting enemy mechs, drones, and giant multi-armed bosses, all the while earning money to improve your machine. You go through that classic Armored Core loop of going through surprisingly long missions filled with secrets, you collect your rewards based on what you accomplish, and then you head back to get new equipment and tweak your build. Maybe give it a Gundam wing or a Hello Kitty paint job before you head back out again. It's a loop that's been around for years, but when it's done well, it's incredibly difficult to stop playing because there's always another weapon you want to try or another part you want to save up for. One thing I appreciated is that the game doesn't spend forever explaining itself. Within a few minutes, you're already boosting around the battlefield, firing missiles, switching weapons, and getting a feel for how your mech really handles. It's very easy to pick up, but there's enough going on that you can already tell just how different the game might feel once you've unlocked more equipment, more guns, and, well, katanas. And that's really what kept pulling me forward, the rush of seeing what the next piece of gear could be, or even the next secret I would find. First things first though, if the combat isn't good, then there's nothing in the world that could get me to play a game. I'm glad to say that this was not the case here, as the combat felt surprisingly good for such a small team. The thing that stood out to me the most was how much emphasis the game puts on movement. Standing still usually isn't a great idea because enemies are constantly firing at you, so you're boosting around the arena and changing direction mid-air while trying to close the distance with melee attacks and trying to keep your weapon cycling while avoiding incoming fire. After a mission or two, you really start to get the rhythm of how everything flows. Your brain kind of just adapts. Instead of pressing a few buttons, you start thinking more about how you position your mech, which enemy should I deal with first. Do I stay back and keep firing, or do I just boost straight into the middle of the fight and try to clear out the smaller enemies before they surround me? That's really where I started having the most fun. The combat has enough speed to keep things exciting without becoming complete chaos, for the most part. Something I never really do is replay missions more than 2 or 3 times, but here I found myself replaying missions because I wanted to approach them differently with another weapon setup or looking for things I might have missed. It's also worth mentioning that this isn't trying to be a slower, heavier mech game, where every movement feels like you're controlling a tank. Your mech has weight to it, but it still feels agile enough that you're encouraged to stay on the move instead of hiding behind cover waiting for cooldowns. This demo just blew me away for so many reasons. The combat is definitely one of them. Now, as much fun as the combat is, I think the garage will play a huge role in how much fun and gameplay diversity you'll have. Every mission gives you another opportunity to earn money, buy new parts, and slowly shape your mech into something that matches the way you want to play. I was surprised to actually find myself checking through the unlocked weapons and equipment, thinking about how they'll affect the next mission. For some, I wanted more mobility. You can go for Osprey parts and be a ninja, or for others, I wanted to stack for firepower and use the heavy-duty parts. Maybe you want to lean into missile builds or focus on getting in close with melee attacks. That constant progression is what kept pulling me back. I'd finish a mission, tell myself I'd just check the shop quickly, notice another weapon I wanted to try, realize I was only a little short on credits, and suddenly I was loading into another mission. It's a really simple loop, but it's one that works because every mission feels like it's pushing you towards your next upgrade. Obviously, this is still a demo, so the parts are limited for now, but you have a surprising amount of parts available already. A good testament to that is just how polished a lot of the core gameplay feels. Now, don't get me wrong, this is still an indie game, and you can absolutely tell that in certain areas. Some animations are a little rough, a few environmental assets get reused here and there are definitely moments where you remember this wasn't built by a massive AAA studio with hundreds of developers. But none of those things really stood out while I was actually playing. I was just having fun boosting toward another group of enemies or trying a different weapon combination, or looking for hidden parts around the map. My attention stayed on the gameplay instead of drifting towards smaller issues because the missions have a nice pace to them. As I mentioned before, the demo includes 3 missions. While the first and third are very focused, the second mission really opens up with a huge map. I do feel like there are some really interesting encounters in it, but there are also long stretches where nothing is really happening, and they try to pad it out with some more enemies. What they have here is serviceable, great even. However, there are several things I'd like to see improved before release. Enemy variety could be expanded on, and most likely will as they continue development. Some visual effects could use another pass, and I'd love to see even more interesting mission objectives. But for a demo that literally released yesterday, I walked away thinking there was a solid foundation here, with just a few things they need to take care of. The moment that really convinced me the developers are on the right track came during the larger encounters. A bit of a spoiler alert if you plan on playing it yourself, but the boss fights do a good job of making you use everything you've been learning throughout the previous missions. One of the bosses will most likely be a recurring rival or boss throughout the game's story, while the other is a giant squid mech that flies around an arena. Gameplay wise, you can't just circle around holding the fire button and expect everything to work itself out. You're gonna have to be on your toes, watching attack patterns, managing your boosts, trying to keep pressure on the boss without putting yourself in a terrible position, which can absolutely happen rather quickly. You have to decide when it's worth committing to a melee attack instead of staying at range. That balance is something I really enjoyed. The game gives you enough mobility to feel really powerful, but it also reminds you pretty quickly that if you get careless, you'll become a moving target and get shish kebabbed. I actually ended up replaying one of the encounters simply because I wanted to see how it felt with a different weapon loadout, and I think that's always a good sign. If a game makes me want to experiment instead of just moving on, it's probably doing something right. The funny thing is, I don't think Code Rapid is trying to reinvent mech games, a fact that a few of the community discussions were actually a bit angry about. But I don't think it needs to. Instead, it feels like the developers sat down and asked themselves what people enjoy most about this genre, and then focused on getting those parts working first. They've already got a really solid starting point, and that will only grow and improve as they add more parts, weapons, and more opportunities to expand what they've already built. It looks like they'll be going into early access pretty soon, so right now is only the beginning of what they'll be handling, and that's probably the most exciting part. If this is the quality they're putting out before early access, I'm really interested to see what the game looks like after another year of development. When I downloaded Code Rapid, I expected to spend 20 or 30 minutes with it before moving on to something else. Personally, I think it's quite easy for an indie game to kind of grab your attention for 10 minutes with flashy visuals or a cool idea. It's much harder to make someone forget they're supposed to stop playing. Is the game perfect? Not at all. There's still plenty of room for improvement before release, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the developers build on what they've already got. But after spending time with the demo, I came away thinking this is a project worth keeping an eye on. So if you're someone who enjoys mech games, likes experimenting with different builds, and misses the feeling of gradually turning your machine into a powerhouse, I think there's a good chance you'll have fun with this. I'm definitely going to keep following the game, and I'll probably jump back in whenever the developers release another update, because I want to see where this project ends up. So let me know what you think. Have you tried the demo yet? If you have, what stood out to you the most? And if you haven't, does this look like something you'd actually play? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks. Thanks again for watching and have a great one.